Some people move through difficult situations without much visible reaction. They remain composed, continue functioning, and give little indication that anything inside them has shifted, even when the situation itself has clearly changed. This isn't emotional strength in the way it's often described. It's the result of something being held back, not deliberately, but automatically. This isn't emotional strength in the way it's often described. It's restraint, something being held back automatically, without becoming visible to others. Certain reactions stop reaching the surface. Emotional responses are registered, contained, and redirected before they ever become legible. The person still experiences pressure, frustration, or hurt, but it doesn't interrupt outward functioning or signal distress to the people around them. Over time, this turns emotional invulnerability into an identity rather than a choice. When someone repeatedly handles distress alone, the mind starts equating self-containment with survival. The nervous system learns that composure is the safest state. Feelings are registered, but not explored. Pain is acknowledged, but not examined. The person doesn't deny reality. They minimize its visible impact. What often goes unnoticed is the effort this requires. Emotional suppression isn't neutral. It demands constant internal regulation. These people aren't calm because life is easy for them. They're calm because they're always managing something internally that never fully resolves. Social reinforcement strengthens this pattern. People praise those who seem unbothered. They're seen as reliable, mature, low maintenance. Others lean on them without checking in, assuming they're fine. Over time, being the stable one replaces being the known one. Their value becomes functional rather than relational. The cost shows up quietly. Joy feels muted because allowing joy would require lowering the same defenses that keep pain contained. Rest feels uncomfortable because stillness removes distraction. Receiving care feels awkward or undeserved because they've trained themselves to need very little. Even in close relationships, they may feel unseen, not because no one is trying, but because they never fully reveal what's happening inside. There's also an internal contradiction. They want closeness, but fear the loss of control that comes with emotional exposure. They want understanding, but struggle to articulate needs. They believe they're handling everything well, yet carry a persistent exhaustion that never fully lifts. Nothing feels catastrophic, but nothing feels deeply relieving either. When cracks appear, they're subtle. Irritability without a clear cause, emotional numbness, a quiet urge to withdraw. These aren't failures. They're signals that the system built to contain everything is reaching its limits. Pain that isn't processed doesn't disappear. It waits. The distinction here is between resilience and suppression. Resilience allows emotional movement. Suppression requires emotional shutdown. The latter works for a long time, which is why it's so easily mistaken for strength. But long-term, it creates distance from both pain and relief. Acting like nothing hurts isn't evidence that nothing matters. It's often evidence that too much once did. And recognizing that difference is where the armor stops being necessary, even if it once was. People who live this way often don't realize how much of themselves they've placed on hold. Not in a dramatic sense, but in small, cumulative ways. Emotions are deferred. Reactions are postponed. Needs are quietly dismissed as impractical. Life keeps moving, and they keep functioning, but something essential stays suspended in the background. One of the most subtle consequences is how they relate to pain itself. Because they learned to endure without response, pain becomes something abstract rather than immediate. It's acknowledged intellectually, but rarely felt fully in the body. This creates a strange distance where experiences register as events rather than impacts. Things happen, but they don't land. Over time, this distance can feel like numbness, even though the emotional capacity is still there. This pattern also shapes how they interpret strength. Strength becomes synonymous with endurance, not responsiveness. Being affected feels like failure. Needing support feels inefficient or risky. They may judge themselves harshly for reactions that others would consider normal, because their internal standard is built around self-containment rather than self-awareness. In relationships, this often leads to asymmetry. They listen well, stabilize situations, and absorb tension without complaint. Partners and friends may feel supported, even deeply cared for, while remaining unaware of how little is being shared in return. The connection feels calm, but not fully reciprocal. Over time, this can create loneliness even in the presence of closeness. Another consequence is delayed emotional processing. Feelings that are postponed don't resolve. They accumulate. Grief may surface years later without a clear trigger. Anger may appear disconnected from its source. Exhaustion may feel disproportionate to current circumstances. These moments can be confusing because they don't match the person's self-image as someone who handles things well. There is often a quiet fear beneath all of this, not of pain itself, but of what might happen if the containment fails. If emotions are allowed to move freely, will they become overwhelming? Will control be lost? This fear keeps the system intact long after the original threat is gone. The environment may be safer now, but the body hasn't updated its assumptions. What makes this pattern hard to change is that it worked. It reduced chaos. It prevented further harm. It earned approval. Letting go of it can feel like giving up a proven survival strategy without knowing what replaces it. So people hold on, even when the cost becomes noticeable. The shift doesn't come from forcing vulnerability or dramatic expression. It comes from recalibrating what strength actually means. Strength isn't the absence of reaction. It's the ability to register impact without being consumed by it. It's allowing experiences to affect you without collapsing or hardening in response. Acting like nothing hurts is often a sign of someone who learned to carry more than they should have had to. That adaptation deserves recognition, not judgment. But it also deserves updating. Because the goal was never to feel nothing. The goal was to survive. And survival doesn't have to remain the standard once safety is possible. Nothing hurting is not a requirement for being capable. It's simply a strategy that once made sense. And understanding that difference allows something quieter and more sustainable to take its place.